Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you may be on this beautiful planet we live on. I'm going to have a little rabbit on again today because, I love doing that stuff. The last couple of videos I've done have really started to get my mind back into the groove. And I know a couple of years ago I was doing the lives with bacon and bourbon, and I'm probably going to do that again once I get some ideas of topics. But this rabbit on sort of format is sort of suiting me at the moment. I'm going to probably repeat myself a little bit because the cycle of stuff that happens is literally that. It's a cycle of stuff that happens, and I'm starting to see the cycle of stuff happening get closer and closer and closer, like the spiral from the big down into the small. And as the things circle and get closer, I think we're getting to a point of time when things are going to just erupt into something, and I'm not 100% sure what that thing is, but I feel it's getting closer. So if those of you who watch the bacon and bourbon videos and it seems like I'm repeating myself, and it's probably true, I probably am, because these points are still pretty valid. Now, I do know in the earlier videos, bacon and bourbon, that I did a couple of videos, or at least one video on religion, and I want to talk a little bit about that today, but it isn't necessarily about religion, but more so about God. And I read a few things the other day from a friend, a contributor, a brother, called The God Concept. And I'm not going to bring up a lot of the quotes out of that today. I will be putting them in later on in some of the later videos. But what I want to do today is talk about my view on that issue. And now I'm not at any point going to ridicule or criticise those that do follow religion, because I do believe there's a need for it. The God complex, or the God concept that has been brought to my attention, is something that I think we need to address well and truly. And it's time. Like, we're getting close to that. Now, I guess before I go any further, I live in a rural estate about 15 kilometres west of a country town in Queensland, just above the Sunshine Coast. And at the moment, as I said the other day, this wall behind me is the side of a sea container, and on the other side there's two other sea containers, and in the middle there's a dome. I'm living literally under the dome. So today is really, really windy, and I'm hoping you will not be impacted by that wind, but the sound may be, and once I play it back I'll have a listen and see if I can get rid of some of the wind that's happening. But if I don't, then apologies to you for putting up with the horrible sound of the wind in the background. Anyway, so just to go back, I guess for my concept, my mum has been taught me from very, very much the first 20 years of my life an openness to the concept of religion and spirituality, and identifying probably the differences between the two. We went to church, or we didn't go to church, I'll rephrase that. We went to Sunday school as kids, and a few times we went to church and dropped a coin in the donation tray that came around. And then both my brother and I decided that this wasn't for us. So my mum, being a reasonably good Church of England person, decided to read us the Bible stories in bed on a Sunday morning, so that we were still getting some religious and or spiritual education as children. Now, I believe that's really critical and quite important, that we all have that understanding of those Bible stories. And if you don't know any, then I suggest you either get on the internet and go to YouFace, TwitTok, Gram Book, and find out illustrated stories of the basic Bible history. And that'll obviously go through Adam and Eve, Genesis, Noah, Moses, Jacob and the coat of many colours, and the story of the Tower of Babel. All of those things that I think are really fundamental in our understanding of where we come from as a, like it or not, a Christian nation. So I think it's important that everyone understands those basic Bible stories, and then that'll give you an idea of where it goes. I think listening and understanding the Ten Commandments is critical. The 7 deadly sins are valid in the value of life for you as having a moral value and understanding. So understand what they are. Understand the principles of the Ten Commandments, where 4 to 5 of them are basically about God and the rest are about humanity and how you treat them. And then really get back to understand the one value that I hold fairly true at the moment is the Gospels according to Jesus. And deny it or not, in my view, and my view only, Jesus was definitely a human being that lived on our planet 26 years ago or whatever. Whether that was when he was born or died, I still don't know those date times. I believe he was genuine, he was real, he was at a different level to us in understanding of his godliness and his oneness with, for want of another word, the God figure or the Creator. His one commandment was, and I use my words here, not what he would have used or what other scholars will say it is, but his one commandment was love and respect your God, whatever you conceive it to be, and treat everybody the way you want to be treated. Now that's just one commandment. It's a quite long way of doing it, and I've pretty much lived that for most of my life, unbeknownst to me that it was Jesus' only really one commandment. And if you think about that, regardless of what you conceive your God to be, if you love that God completely and utterly, and you treat people around you the way you want to be treated, then none of the other things are important. Because if you want someone to treat you like a complete a-hole, then you just treat them like one. And that's fair and reasonable that they'll treat you the same. If you want someone to love you, then you love them. And this isn't rocket science. It's really, really a wonderfully simplistic way to live your life. And things I've been listening to recently, and names, I'm not sure which one it came from, like all of these different podcasts, and it might even been one that talked about, speaking of Jesus, that said, when the rules become too much to remember, you are further away from your Christ consciousness. Pretty much meaning, when rules become more and too hard to understand, it isn't creation anymore, it isn't Christ consciousness, it isn't God, for want of a better word. And I know that word's been flogged to death, but I can't think of another one. Other than I love the word Gus. Gus to me is God, universe, spirit, or source, whichever one you want to call it. So it encompasses all of those. So if I remember, I'm going to use Gus now instead. And I think I've said this before, again repeating myself. I truly believe in the duality, or the process of two, and even in that the Holy Trinity of left and right. Like, you're either left or you're right, you're either up or you're down. You can't be almost up or almost down. At a point in the middle, you go from one to the other. So in saying that, I believe in Gus being the almighty spirit of life and creation and sun, and I believe in Gaia, one of another word, as the feminine energy that is our nurturer and our developer. Neither one can exist without the other, and we can't exist without the other either. Digress a little bit. I don't actually believe women's argument that says that they are the creators of life, because without the spark of man's sperm, life would not be created in woman. And I know the argument would be, we can do from sperm banks and we can procreate for the next 200 years without man. However, sperm is still the spirit of man, and I mean male spirit, so a female cannot create a life without masculine sperm to do so. Sorry, that's just biology. But a man cannot create life without a female. So if we don't work together in this dynamic, we cease to exist as humans. So in saying that, in the infinite wisdom of Gus and Gaia, their relationship of spirit of man and nurture of woman creates the gods of nature and sky, or spirit. So I'm going to call it Gus and Gaia for the want of that, and that is the one God to me, is the duality of the spirit and the nurturer, or nature. So the God concept is in history, for me and other people in my influence or in the God concept, will tell you that God has been around probably for, some people say 6,000 years, to bring into the Egyptian and the creating them. They believing they were the gods, and that filtered down to the peasants who elevated them into the god status, and then the peasants revolted and pulled them down and realised they weren't gods, and then the God concept was brought into a concept then of a grander object, where even the peasants believed that, hey, this God thing works, let's continue it down the line of a doctrine that the peasants have to follow, and they have to provide for us, even though we are peasants and we walk around in peasant-style robes. You give us taxes, for want of another word, so that we can help you in your processes to be one with the gods as they conceive them to be. And that's not right or wrong, that's just in that modern Middle Eastern European mindset and philosophy. But even the most primitive cultures in society today, the Africans of the Serengeti, or the tribesmen of the Serengeti, the Australian Aboriginal, who are probably, without doubt, the most, they were, I don't think they are now, I think they're really up with us at many levels of environment and community. But when Captain Cook first arrived on the Australian shores in 1788, I think it was 1788, 1770 maybe, he found them as the most unevolved species on the planet, and that's no disrespect. They actually had no need to evolve. They lived in an isolated land. They had no exposure to any nation other than themselves. They didn't need to. They may have done minor trading between different cultures inside of the Aboriginal environment, but if they weren't fighting with each other and killing each other, they may have done some trade. So there was no need for them to evolve other than where they'd got to. Now you can look at the invasion of Captain Cook, where it clearly wasn't, because if it wasn't Captain Cook, it would have been someone from the Dutch East or West India or East India Company, or the French or the Spanish, even the Maoris. They were expanding. Someone would have invaded or come into Australia and brought the indigenous people into the modern world. So they would, people, and I don't think the Aboriginal do so much, but I think a lot of entitled white people, and I think I'll get to that in a minute, they decided to blame the English and their colonisation on the problems that are happening, all of the indigenous people in all the worlds of the Western worlds at the moment. And it clearly isn't that, but let's just leave that for another day. So anyway, back to the God thing. Even the indigenous cultures had a spirit and a dream time which was suggestive of something other than themselves, and then they all worshipped that and admired that and idolised it and followed that and went through those as their rules and guidelines. So it can't just be a philosophy designed by the Middle Eastern European people to control the masses. There is something else there, and you can think otherwise of it, and that's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that. You are on the tree of life regardless whether you believe it or not, and we know that famous saying, as above so below, and as if the branches of the tree of life are going to reach heaven, the roots have to go to hell. So we're all part of the same thing, and it's our choices that we make that determine where we are in that tree. Now you can be an atheist and ardently believe that there isn't a God, which almost suggests that you believe in God because you choose not to believe in God, which is sort of like one of those loops I don't completely understand. But if you're an atheist and you jump off the tree of life, you believe you're free of the dogmas and the strict regulations in a religion and or a philosophy around a God, you're floating free momently until you hit the ground, and then you start breaking down and you start devolving or breaking back into the soil and getting absorbed by the tree of life. So even though momently you could be thinking you're free of religion and dogma, you float free until you hit the ground, and then you break down and go back into the tree of life. So you really never leave it. You're just thinking you're free for a moment, and that's great. Like, you live with that, and I'm happy with that. There's no problem in my mind. However, to deny the tree of life is to deny existence. So I actually believe that, and I never did before. Like, I guess the word would be agnostic, but now I'm actually heading down the lines of I actually believe in Gus and Gaia, not just one over the other. I think they're equally important inside the development of creation. I actually don't believe that, and I've heard the argument on the internet or the YouTube, that something can be created from nothing. Now, scientifically, that's impossible. So, to even suggest that you can make something, it has to come from something. Like, you need things to make something come to exist. We need to really get onto that. Anyway, so for me, I believe in Gus and Gaia. I think they're really important, and I'm going to hold that one commandment true in my mind, that I'm going to love Gus and Gaia with all of my heart, and I'm going to treat people the way I want them to treat me. So I think that's an important concept. As for moving on just a little bit, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but we need to stop sensationalising events that happen around us. And I'm seeing no amount of bombardment of videos from people, all influencers, a high respect I have for them, that are really starting to hammer this ICE thing happening in America. And all they're doing is creating a mindset in my mind of encouraging people to be stupid ass dickheads. So just no news is good news. All the news we get is overwhelming us, and it is making us become numb to everything that's happening, because ultimately, if I'm not in Minnesota, or if I'm not living the life of Minneapolis and the daycare centres, there's nothing I can do about it other than create a problem for everybody who lives there. It's addressed, it's been identified, things need to be done about it, but unless the Minnesotan people get up there and do something to stop the corruption and the law, I think it's known and it's been reported, then the federal government in any country that needs to say, well, yeah, I'll go and investigate that. Yep, there's corruption. We won't send money to Minnesota anymore, and we'll let them sort it out. And I guarantee that if there's no more money going to Minnesota from the federal government, then the Minnesotan governments will go, shit, we've got no money. We can't allow this to continue. They will stop it. But the more we put up this crap about it, the more in money we put into it by people paying protesters to go there, the less any change is going to happen. Wherever we are in the world, we don't need to know what's happening in other parts of the world. We need them to sort it out. And the governments need to go, well, I'm not going to give them any more money. And we need a strong government to do that. Most Western governments are starting to bring that up at the moment, and I think we just need to let them go with it and leave them the hell alone. And I know people make money from the influencing and saying things. Yeah, not interested in going there. So stop sensationalising the stuff. Stop feeding these activists and helping them get money. It's not helping us at all, any way, shape or form. Anyway, just to finish off on a little another note of that side, and it all relates to every video I've seen, pretty much without exception, have been entitled white people. And I believe that they are either unemployed or they're retired, got nothing better to do with their time. They get paid by a person, a organisation, an industry to go out there and create a problem. Seriously, single white people or entitled white people, grow the hell up. It's like, get another job, stop being this, stop creating this issues that are destroying your world and your local community, and you know that it is. If you interfere with a police person committing their duty or in the commitment of their duties, go to jail, no question. And if you commit violence against them, then you need to be able to wear the consequences without whinging. So you create the situation, deal with the consequence. If you get beaten, don't go there. If there's a slight chance that you blocking the road is going to impede an investigation or an act you are breaking the law, deal with the consequences. Sorry, white people, grow the hell up, get with it. Anywho, that's all. Short one today. Another rabbit on, and love that. So really, again, as I say all the time, enjoy your journey. Peace, love and mung beans. Until the next time I'm speaking at you, remember this, and off you go. Have fun.